I'm Marlene Artilla.
And today on A Just For You, we're going to be doing a very special segment.
Yes, to my surprise, the 1870s are very, very interesting.
We're going to be showing you the best and the worst of this time period.
Yes, and now off to Brenna Lima for our first live segment.
Now, we all know that in New York, subways were a popular way of transportation, and we can thank Alfred Beach for that. On February 26th, Beach made up this project under Broadway. A tunnel that was 300 feet long, and it pushed a car using wind propelled by a fan to push the train car. Now, there was no fee to get in it.
Now we'll go over the topic of 1871, which was also known for the KKK, which was also the Ku Klux Klan. Congress passed the Ku Klux Klan Act, which authorized the use of federal troops in the Klan's suppression and for the trial acts of its members in federal court, which also meant that Congress wanted to diminish the Ku Klux Klan forever. After this happened, they didn't make any more public appearances until 1915. And the point of the KKK was to make sure the whites had more power over the African Americans.
Never knew that.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. And now moving on with the 1872 segment with the Bender family, also known as the Bloody Benders, who were serial killers who owned a general store and an inn.
The Bender family killed over 11 victims from the year of 1872 to 1873. The Bender family consisted of the parents, John Bender and Ma Bender, John Bender being 60 and Ma Bender being 42. The Bender family had two children, John Bender Jr. and Kate Bender. John Bender Jr. was 25 and Kate Bender was 22. The Bender family's inn resided in Labette County in Kansas. There are many scenarios in which the Bender family disappeared. One scenario is that a group of local riders caught up to the Bender family on their escape and killed them mercilessly. Another scenario is that the Bender family caught a train in Thayer and escaped, and they haven't been seen
For
since.
being a serial killer family, but also how they killed their victims by cracking their skulls and slitting their throats. They also buried most of the bodies right off the farm on Apple Orchard.
Happens to be a very interesting time in American history. During this time, Civil War veterans were suffering from a disease that we now know as PTSD. Back then, they didn't know that, so they created insane asylums for these people and many others suffering from other diseases. For the Insane is a very popular insane asylum in Athens, Ohio. The first person to enter this asylum was a man who also suffered from PTSD. They thought by freezing him, kicking him, and causing him to bleed would shock the illness out of him. The second official patient for the insane asylum was a man by the name of David Fruman. David Fruman believed he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. A way that they would also help people like him was they would try to shock the memory out of him. This caused severe deaths, and oftentimes they would put them in comas in which they would then stick needles into their tear ducts. The Athens Asylum for the Insane in Athens, Ohio was finally closed in 1911 for the cruel and unusual treatment of their patients and the disgusting conditions of the area.
Well, that was disturbing. Anyways, July 31st, 1875, Andrew Johnson died of a stroke while visiting his daughter in Tennessee. Andrew Johnson was the 17th President of the United States right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He served from 1865 to 1869. Back to you, Marlene, with the section on Custer.
And now off to the time period of 1876 with the Battle of Little Big Horn. It occurs when Lieutenant Colonel George Custer and his 7 U.S. cavalry engaged the Cheyenne Indians above the Little Big Horn River. All 264 members of the 7th Cavalry and Custer perished in the battle. It's one of the more known battles in American military history. Off to Alicia, Missouri with the segment of 1878.
Thank you, Marlene. In 1878, American poetry seemed to be at its top peak as an American poet by the name of Carl Sandburg wrote Abraham Lincoln's biography, receiving 2 Pulitzer Prizes.
You see, that's hard to win. It's crazy. How
I don't
you
know
get that.
much about poetry, but I'm thinking that's a pretty big
Sounds
deal.
a fancy word.
Last but not least, we have March 31st, 1879. Now, most of us were not born around that time period, but it actually happens to be a very important date in American history, as that was the day in which it was built.
That is for the people who enjoy and appreciate the beauty of Madison Square Garden, also known as MSG, and its beauty in New York City.
It's true. Madison Square Garden is known for holding over 320 events, some events annually, such as their famous New Year's Eve events.
The Garden has held many talents, from the king of pop, Michael Jackson, to the king himself, Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley, in fact, was the first person to sell out the Garden 4 consecutive times.
Not all. They also held concerts for Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and Fish, all talented performers.
Madison Square Garden was named after James Madison, the 4th President of the United States. Now that's all for tonight in our segment.
So,
That's all, folks!
and from Ashley,
Peace!
what was it called?